Welcome back. Before we resume the world this week, a sample of the stories that Tom Burgess-Watson will be following for you at the top of the hour. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange says he'll respect a UN panel's decision that says he wants a UN panel's decision respected and that the charges against him be dropped. He's been holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy for more than 3 years. The battle against the Zika virus, the UN calls for better access to contraception and abortion in Latin America, while Washington advises abstinence or condom use for travelers returning from affected areas. A constitutional reform that would strip terror convicts of their French citizenship sparks bitter debate in Parliament, the Prime Minister rejecting accusations from his left flank that it's a throwback to Vichy France. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's The World This Week. We're in the company of Dana Kennedy, contributor to The Daily Beast. Welcome back as well to Bernard Guetta, French public radio station France Inter. Politico.eu's Nicholas Vineker is with us, and so is Radio France International's Elena Servatas. We were talking just before the break about that anti-EU sentiment that's building, tied to the flow of migrants to a degree, and to the flow of migrants and asylum seekers, with the Syrian army on the march this week, cutting off a major supply route to the rebels near the northern city of Aleppo. Well, you can expect more of those refugees to come, a lot more. At a donors conference in London this Thursday, where $10 billion was pledged for refugees, the Turkish Prime Minister warned of tens of thousands that could flee Aleppo, and already this Friday, we are seeing up to 20,000. Those figures are from the United Nations, pressing up against the Turkish border, and
which is closed.
Which is closed for the time being. And there's this sentiment that they're going to be sent the way of Europe.
Maybe yes, probably yes. They will be allowed to enter Turkey, I guess so, after two, three days. I don't know. And then it will be Europe, because this is the only possible destination after all. And so our European problems and British problem will increase. And the situation down there is really terrible, terrible. 30,000 people more on the border, flying the situation, flying the bombing, the Russia which is completely wrong, not only morally wrong, but politically wrong. Because what after? After the Saudi Arabia and the Sunnite countries will increase the armament of the Syrian opposition.
Because on the one hand, you have the Russians who have stepped up the bombing in a lot of those areas, and that's the reason why the Syrian government's advancing. And on the other, the Saudis this week saying they're ready to send ground troops.
Against Daesh, not against the Syrian government. So this is quite a different situation, but nevertheless, if the opposition is on the verge to be defeated, of course the Saudi will send arms to them. And so it will be again a war situation in Syria. And quite quickly it will be a war situation in the entire region.
We saw this week, Elena Servatas, the falling apart for now of talks that were heavily pushed by the U.S. and Russia in Geneva, political talks. How do you feel about the Russians, on the one hand, bombing areas that are clearly not ISIS, and on the other hand, being a major co-sponsor of these peace talks?
Nothing surprising. I mean, for me, it's nothing surprising. Absolutely very Russian way of doing. And I just read not so long ago the last report of Syrian Human Rights Observer, and it was like 1,400 people from civilians bombed during Russian strikes. So we will have much more than 30,000.
Certainly yes. Certainly yes.
Thanks to Russia.
Nicholas Vinegar, is the U.S. handling this right?
Well, many people, many countries, France, to some extent the UK, blame the United States for not having acted sooner or not having bombed the regime when the red line on chemical weapons was crossed. And that is a bone of contention between the European Union and the United States that remains to this day. And that has eroded trust between these two allies. At this point, the cat is out of the bag. As was very well described, the situation looks to be getting worse, not better, with more weapons and troops coming into the region. And for the time being, Europe is on the receiving end of a refugee crisis with only bad answers. We can, welcome these people or turn them away and look terrible. On the other hand, we're not doing much to fix the crisis inside Syria.
We thought there would be these sort of watershed moments. First, there was, in the last couple of months, the agreement with Iran. There was the Paris terror attacks, where suddenly there was a stepped-up effort against ISIS in Syria and Iraq. But what we're seeing on the ground is just the situation going from bad to worse.
Well, without being too cosmic, it's very difficult when you talk to either one of us about the U.S. and whether U.S. is to blame or not. The fact that the U.S. is so in bed with Saudi Arabia, which we all know that Saudi Arabia is also funding radical Islam around the world, it becomes this crazy mirror funhouse. So to be able to be in all our made up in on our suits and decide what's best and what isn't best. There are so many lies and so many things that really aren't being said. I think when you ask, what's the U.S. doing about Syria, really, in a massive global way, we went into Iraq, right, on ridiculous pretenses. We destabilized the country. We brought democracy to a place that doesn't need it, left a vacuum, which led to ISIS. And then we're supposed to discuss what we're supposed to do. So really, it's ridiculous. And we, in America and here, we have these conversations about it. But the problem is, it really is surreal. And it all comes down to money. It all comes down in the U.S. to what you can't say about who controls the money. It's very complicated, in my opinion.
All right. The Russians, though, are they getting let out of jail these days? Because there is this thaw in relations these days with Moscow. And it is Moscow's aerial campaign that's changing the situation inside of Syria.
Absolutely, yes.
Putin's more honest. I'm sorry, Putin is a way. He's more honest in a way. In a way, he's more honest. Mm-hmm. He may be a thug, but isn't he in a way more honest?
But, basically, we have now two problems. There are two ideas about Syrian compromise. The Russian or the Irano-Russian idea, which is a change of government in Damascus with
Damascus.
In Damascus, with Bashar al-Assad still president of the country. And so some ministries for the opposition, and the problem is solved. This is the compromise. For the US, even the US, for France, for UK, basically for Europe, the compromise is a change of regime without Assad and a coalition between the different political forces. The Russians don't want that, so they bomb with the support of Iran, the political support of Iran, and the ground support of Iran also in Syria. After that, it will be a bigger war between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It will be a terrible catastrophe in the area with big repercussions in Europe. This is a pure catastrophe. Pure catastrophe.
All right, so the Russians playing their game. On that note, and I'm going to put this to you, Elena Servatas, has the leader of Chechnya gone rogue? Ramzan Kadyrov Ramzan, excuse me.
Take care.
Ramzan, excuse me. On Instagram, complaining about U.S. censorship because the social networking site took down a video that depicts two prominent opposition leaders. A video on his Instagram account that depicts two prominent opposition leaders, including the former Prime Minister Kasyanov, in what looks like the crosshairs of a gun. People say, oh, Kadyrov's the puppet of Putin, but is that true?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, well, from one hand, of course, he's trying to be the man who is just looking for Putin's attention now after assassination of Boris Nemtsov, and he knows, and he cannot not to know, that Putin was really furious about this death, and he knows that there will be an answer, because there was two people arrested in Russia, these two Chechen guys. And so now what he's doing, Ramzan Kadyrov, in his Instagram, he's doing not his one-man show, but one viewer show. And he just tries to attract the reaction of Kremlin. And it's a long time already.
The Kremlin, which increased its aid to Chechnya last year.
But wait, Putin he's not a guy, he will not react just immediately. He used to act just, if there is a crime, the punishment will follow, but not the time that you're waiting for it. It will become much more later, and you will see.
Kadyrov, after all, is a mad dog, certainly yes, but he's Putin's mad dog, with a certain degree of autonomy, of course. But basically, he's Putin's mad dog.
But doesn't Ramzan have a lot of soldiers there in Chechnya who could, the minute Putin says send me to Syria, and they're so tough, aren't the Chechens like the toughest people on the planet? Aren't they the ones that if Putin says okay and Ramzan lets the dogs out, couldn't they actually have a huge impact on Syria?
They can.
Chechens?
They can. 20,000 people just swear on Quran that they will follow Ramzan Kadyrov wherever he goes, whatever he does. They will follow his advices. I don't know. But if one day Ramzan is not there, if Vladimir Putin said, because he already sent several signals. For example, when Ramzan was bombing the buildings of those families of terrorists, as he presented, Putin said no one is allowed, even the Chechen chef is not allowed to these extrajudicial reprisals. That was a sign, and he's afraid. So we don't know what's going to happen after.
But without Kadyrov, Putin would be very weak in Chechnya.
That's true as well.
And he doesn't want a third civil war there. In New Hampshire Thursday night, voters got to see what's now a two-horse race for the Democratic Party nomination for president. The former governor of Maryland, Martin O'Malley, dropping out after Iowa on Monday. The Iowa caucuses where Hillary Clinton edged Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders by the narrowest of margins. Would you say that was a win or a loss, Nicholas Vinegar, for Clinton?
A loss, because she is the obvious front runner, and the Clinton campaign has done Iowa already. They should know all the ins and outs of that sort of complex caucus process, and they should have won by a higher margin, even to send a signal. And everybody expects Hillary Clinton to not just win the nomination, but also win the presidential election. However, time and time again, there appear vulnerabilities in her candidacy, and this is one of them. This is a moment where people say, "Is it that obvious that she's going to win?"
She's probably going to lose New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders is from neighboring Vermont, but they say, "Oh, it's all going to be over come Super Tuesday."
Possibly, but it was such a huge surprise when Barack Obama won too, and it was a very, on one hand, a young African-American man no one ever heard of, and now we have 75-year-old Bernie Sanders, who's the last person you'd think the millennials in the U.S. would like, and they're the ones that like him. They're the ones that don't like Hillary. It's a pantsuit mentality. She doesn't understand. It's not 1995 anymore. She doesn't know how to really reach people in the new world. You can see it. She's too much of like a, geography teacher from high school. She doesn't get it. Bernie Sanders gets it. Barack Obama gets it. Bill Clinton got it. But you know what the big deal is? Now everyone's talking about what's wrong with Bill Clinton. He's not quite right. He's kind of weak, and there's all these rumors, and I don't want to put anything out there, but it's been written that he has, maybe Parkinson's. Something's going on there. I hope she pulls it out. I mean, I want to see that after all this time she deserves it, but she needs to get out of the pantsuits, both this way and this way.
All right, that's on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, the guy who finished second in Iowa was gracious on the night, but that soon passed.
But actually, I think I came in first because if you take a look, okay, Oh, that voter fraud. These politicians are brutal. They're brutal. They are brutal. They are a bunch of dishonest cookies, I want to tell you. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this. It's one of the reasons.
Elena Servitas.
Sounds like Marine Le Pen, no? Usually she's
Funnier, though.
even funnier. Because we compare him to Marine Le Pen in Russia or to Vladimir Zhirinovsky. There is such a guy in Russia who is really crazy and insane with really bizarre ideas. And for us, so we have something similar. And so Trump is really, really funny for us. And at the same time, I'm a bit jealous because in United States you never know, like in case of Hillary, who's the winner in Russia.
Yeah, it's entertainment. It's entertainment. And he's the biggest winner right now is a superstar presenter named Megyn Kelly. And one reason why people think he lost in Iowa, he refused to debate her. She's beautiful. She's the biggest superstar in TV news right now. And she's the one. She just signed a $10 million book deal. But that's America. Politics, entertainment, it's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Bernard Guetta, do you wish French politics were more entertaining, like what we just saw there?
No, but, basically, there is two possible situations. First, Hillary Clinton wins the nomination after an exhausting fight and long fight with Bernie Sanders. Second, she loses the nomination for Sanders. And in those two cases, Marco Rubio would win the presidential election.
See, I think you are pretty smart.
All right, there's the prediction.
I think you're smart.
Before we go, French culture this week, rocked by two stories involving precocious stars in their field. Benjamin Millepied, star of ballet, but the 38-year-old husband of Hollywood actress Natalie Portman, called it quits as director of dance for the Paris Opera. He'd come in to the post a little more than a year ago, boasting of radical reform in the staid world of French ballet. Instead, he's going to be going back to choreography. Much more tragic, the apparent suicide of Benoît Viollier, the 44-year-old chef at the restaurant L'Hôtel de Ville in the Swiss town of Crissier. News of his death emerged the very same day the Michelin Guide came out with its annual rankings on restaurants, his establishment retaining its coveted 3 stars. Dana Kennedy, I read your piece in the Daily Beast, and there's really shock at why this man who had no money problems, wife, 12-year-old son.
Beautiful wife. Lovely son. Lovely dog McQueen, a Springer Spaniel. He had everything.
Yeah.
The best chef in the world.
Why would he kill himself?
And I don't know. And I asked everyone, I said, I talked to a lot of people from the top chefs in the world. I spoke to his sister, who comes from a really small town. It was a very modest family he came from.
From the southwest of France.
Yes, he really ascended to the top very, very rapidly. There was a chef, and I'm forgetting right now his name because I'm not a foodie. Freddy quelque chose.
Freddie, I know him.
Okay.
Freddie.
Anyway, he's the one. If you think it, let me know. He's the one that said to me, the only thing everyone had. I talked to people who had dinner with him 2 nights beforehand. He was jovial. He didn't appear to be depressed. And Freddie was the one that said maybe he just went too fast. But I don't know. Could it be internalized clinical depression? I said, was he having an affair? Was his wife having an affair? They worked together 24/7. None of the things that would make sense made sense, in an awful way, in this world of Facebook where everybody feels inadequate and everyone thinks that everyone's doing better. He did the best, and then he said goodbye.
Suicide is always a mystery, but this restaurant was really one of the best in the world. Really.
It was voted the best in the world.
Yes.
And
And it's such a high-pressure world.
Certainly.
But I asked them that, you know, and all these different people who knew him, his family, they said no, it wasn't as if he was under constant pressure. He just won this big award. And when you think of neurosurgeons who work on Siamese, you know, separate Siamese twins' brains, or astronauts, Neil Armstrong almost missed the landing. You know, they didn't kill themselves. They had some pressure. So I bet it'll come out. I bet it will come out. But it was an incredible story.
Is it certifiably 100% a suicide?
The cops said that to me. They said yes, but they said, Madame, you know, we're Switzerland, so we're discreet. And who knows? It could still come out. Not necessarily. You know, you could be right. There could be something else.
Like we had this story in France when one chef suicided himself. Everybody was saying for no reason, but after people who are writing about kitchen French cuisine, they said
Bernard Loiseau.
Yeah.
yes, but it was this story with his wife or something. It was
That
many allegations.
He was worried about his losing a star and all
and-
that, but this was because this guy just gotten everything.
And it has nothing to do with Michelin, with Guide Michelin, because it was Guardian, I guess, or BBC even said that, because he was stressing before. It was just one day before, right? Before Michelin.
But he
started
wasn't
returning.
on the
But
verge
he-
at all
yeah,
to
but he-
lose a star.
Exactly.
but-
Not at
but
all.
Certainly not.
He's not receiving their stars even. This show by Michelin, he was not even involved.
I want to thank our panel, Elena Servitas, Bernard Guetta, Nicholas Vinegar, Dana Kennedy. Stay with us, though. Our Media Watch segment is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
The jury is split on Julian Assange here, by the way.
Yes, well, that seems to be the kind of the global picture, not just talking about Twitter users, but looking at people whose opinions are very much respected in their fields, whether they are legal analysts or journalists or commentators. The opinions are divided once again. If we take a look at this article in The Guardian, which is written by Joshua Rosenberg, a former television news correspondent and now a legal commentator, he talks about how did the UN get it so wrong on Julian Assange. He says that basically this working group overlooked the central fact that he has not been detained, but rather has hidden himself away. And this seems to be central to what all the division of opinion is all about. Now, what he goes on to say is that of the 5 members of that UN working group, 1 was Australian, so recused himself. And then of the remaining 4, there was just 1 dissenting voice, and that was a Ukrainian lawyer, Vladimir Toshilovsky. And he has quoted him here as saying that the others assumed Julian Assange had been detained in the Ecuadorian embassy by UK authorities, not that he had gone there of his own volition. And of course, as Joshua Rosenberg points out, he fled bail in 2012 and used the embassy as a safe haven. So it was self-confinement, not detention. He pays off by saying that the idea that he should be due compensation for all this heaps offensiveness on absurdity. But when you look elsewhere, John Pilger, a very famous journalist and documentary maker, who is a big supporter of Julian Assange, I should point out, he says that basically this is one of the epic miscarriages of justice of our time. An interesting turn of phrase because, of course, the whole point is that Julian Assange hasn't actually faced justice yet.
That's right, yeah.
But anyway, he says that Assange has been relentlessly smeared, yet charged with no crime, and his greatest criticisms are reserved for the Swedish prosecutor Marianne Nye. Now, he says she's made no attempt to question Assange when he was in Sweden, nor has she come to London to try to question him there. He says she's refused to give an explanation as to why she won't guarantee that he won't be extradited to the United States. Now, he pays off by saying that by telling us the truth, Assange has earned his freedom, whereas justice is his right. Slightly pompous, but there you go. And in amongst all this, most people seem to have forgotten that there is an alleged rape victim out there. Not so if we take a look at the Pool's website. Helen Lewis has written this article about him, and she admits that she finds this gentleman very hard to like. She says he's self-aggrandising and prone to paranoia, as she puts it. But if I can highlight this particular quote, Assange sees himself as the victim of a grand conspiracy. Oddly enough, thousands of rape victims in this country feel the same. Many of them are scared to leave their house. We might not use the words arbitrarily detained, but they are just as much as Julian Assange is.
It seems many Twitter users are having trouble with the findings of this UN panel.
and having trouble taking it very seriously. The hashtag arbitrarily detained has become very popular on Twitter today, very widely used, and mostly by people who want to poke fun at this idea. This particular Twitter user says, I have to stay in today waiting for a parcel force delivery. I hope the UN is taking note, hashtag arbitrarily detained. Because what people are saying is he's not detained. He went there of his own volition. And this is what a lot of people find it very hard to understand. So there are plenty of jokes out there on Twitter today. Wife caught me cheating. I'm now hiding in the bathroom, but I'm looking forward to compensation for this arbitrary detention. Stig Abel, who is an editor of the Sun newspaper in the United Kingdom, says it's a bit chilly today. I hope not too many people get arbitrarily detained by the weather. And you can see that people basically are seeing this as really rather ridiculous. This Twitter user says, arbitrarily detained is the new quiet night in. Assange has only been arbitrarily detained if you give the word arbitrarily, well, an arbitrary meaning. Because, of course, it does have those two meanings. One being, well, it's kind of, you know, it's all a bit vague. And the other one refers to sort of despotic, autocratic behaviour by a state. Two of my final favourite ones on this one. David Schneider, a UK comedian. The toilet in the Ecuadorian embassy is in use, and instead of engaged, we've got arbitrarily detained. And the final word.
People have spare time to do it.
It is quite incredible, isn't it? But thank God they do, because it gives us plenty to talk about. And Colgan of Cridey says Churchill would like to be released from arbitrary detention by Winston. And clearly that is Churchill sitting underneath Winston.
Oh, dear. OK. The concept of arbitrary detention.
It seems semantics come up quite a lot, because another thing that people are questioning, Assange always talks about he was under house arrest, and that was one of the things that the UN working group talked about too. However, he was actually only under a curfew. So he was free to go everywhere. In fact, it's mentioned in the Pool article that he was seen at a debate in London during that time. So he was electronically tagged, and he had to report to a police station, and he had to be home by a certain time. But it wasn't house arrest, as is traditionally understood by the term.
We're going to leave it there. I want to thank you. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in The World This Week.